when you lack direction, you'll kind of latch on to anything. And a lot of the things that they're latching onto are the popular stereotypes. So you ask a lot of young men, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What did they say? I want to be a rapper. I want to be a ball player, right?
I would say, you know what, when I come on here, we always talk about social determinants of health. And so for me, it is what else is happening in their environment that is exacerbating whatever challenge is already there.
What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And since 2020, our team has reached out directly and indirectly to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. So as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Let's get some things out of the way first. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. And then also follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And also, if you want to advertise your business product and service on any of the platforms that I'm a part of, please feel free to reach out to me at dr.vibe at the dr.vibeshow.com. If you haven't been around for a bit, but you should know, I'm a big supporter of Black men and those who love them. That's actually how I started my journey online long time ago, over 5,000 conversations ago. And I always, when I meet good Black men, I want to provide them a safe and brave space to share. And I've met a Black man recently. I meet Black men all the time, but this gentleman I want to share with you, we're going to have the start of some ongoing monthly conversations from a Black male therapist lens. So let me tell you who this friend is. Joe Corley is a licensed therapist, mental wellness consultant, and educator with a 20-year career in education and mental health. He holds master's degrees in education and counseling. After years of teaching, he recognized his talents could have a deeper impact beyond the classroom. During his own personal healing journey, he uncovered the transformative power of therapy and mental wellness, particularly within the BIPOC community. And in response, Joe founded Real You Behavioral Health Consulting, PLLC, dedicated to addressing the stigma and gaps in mental health care for people of color. He also serves as a therapist at a teen and adolescent mental health center, a role that he speaks to his passion for helping others overcome trauma inspired by their own childhood experiences. Through therapy, public speaking, and his podcast, Vulnerability is the New Sexy, Joe aims to guide people of color into mental health spaces with grace, empathy, and vulnerability. So, here to chat with us tonight about the difficulty of unlocking joy for Black men is hopefully my new friend, Joe Corley. What's up?
Absolutely. How you doing tonight?
Man, as I said to you before I came on, I'll say it again because you hadn't heard that one before. I'm blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, solution for someone's problem, and Black-alicious. How about you?
Yeah, about the same. It'll take a minute to get used to that one. About the same, yeah.
Good stuff. And we already got someone in the house right way home. What is up? I know you messaged me early on. I will return your message after I finish this epic conversation. So, Joe, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to be with us. So this is the first time you've been here with the family. Can you share a little bit about your background outside of what we already shared?
Yeah, so my initial career was accounting, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just me trying not to be broke,
Okay.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like, between not being broke and wanting to be Marcus Graham from the movie Boomerang, I went into corporate space, and then, I was bored to death. So I had an opportunity to, transition into being a teacher. And I did that for several years before I realized that the system would only allow me to do so much for the kids. So I moved into the mental health space to help not only children, but adults become happy and whole, man. So that's where I've been at, and that's what I'm on.
Wonderful. Absolutely love it. And when you and I have many things in common other than being black men, but my father was a public school teacher for 38 years in the same public school.
Wow.
So let me ask, what was the reason for you transitioning out of the education system into what you're doing now, therapy and counseling?
Well, for one, I was struggling with a lot of this, a lot of the systematic things that go along with being in the education system, and the limitations of it. Like, kids aren't eating. We are taxing them for school lunch, and if they don't have school lunch, then we're not allowing them to eat. And then we're concerned with behavior and 4+4 and the Pythagorean theorem and things of that nature when someone's going home to abuse and situations like that. And then, I had my own kind of mental health breakdown somewhere, in the, around 2018, 2019, that kind of put me in the mental health space to begin with. And I got a little taste of it, and I said, okay, yeah, this is where I belong. I was in group therapy, which was very foreign and strange to me. When I first got there, I didn't want to say or talk to anybody. But after a while, I became very talkative. And then, some of the other, I'm calling patients because I was in the hospital. Some of the other patients were kind of saying, hey, you're kind of good at this. Maybe you might want to pursue it. So I did.
And how long of a journey was getting that accreditation?
Ooh, man, it took, let me see. By the time I broke down, I had just finished a master's degree, right? So I was getting ready to go into being a principal. So I got my master's in education and I started interviewing for that. And I kind of, switched gears. So it took about 2 years to finish up a second master's in counseling. So I did that. And then after that, I had to, do some internships and get a certain amount of hours and all of that. So it took I'd say about three plus years.
Wow. And do you remember that when you finished your studies, how was that feeling?
It was amazing. That's what I would describe as what we're talking about today. It was a joyful feeling.
Mm.
I didn't get the opportunity to go to the graduation for my first master's degree. Now here I was, and strange, in a coincidence, by the time my second one came, I actually was, I flew from my older sister's funeral, and she had the same week I graduated, she had been murdered.
My condolences. Sorry. Wow.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Wow.
But following that up, I was still able to find joy in the moment of graduating from my second master. So,
wow. Okay. So before we really roll up our sleeves and get in the conversation, how has this been a rewarding journey for you? This part of your journey being a therapist and counselor?
Oh man, it's just a continuation of what I was doing already as an educator. Going through therapy, it helped me realize that I wasn't giving myself credit for what I was doing, and I was doing a great job of lying to myself about who I was and what I had accomplished thus far. So I'll go into the therapy room and then, I'm talking to the therapist and he'd be like, I'm like, nobody loves me. Nobody appreciates me. Nobody, cares about what I'm doing. But I had all this evidence that went against what I was saying. And after, he helped guide me to a space where I was unable to lie to myself. I was able to appreciate, who I was and what I've done. So transitioning into therapy, it's more of the same. Like, I'm literally, helping couples survive, saving lives, and, talking young people into living and finding joy and purpose. So, I don't even know how to describe it, but there's tangible evidence that, I'm walking in my purpose, and I love it.
Love it. I love when people are aligned and it's for good intentions. That's fantastic. Want to say a shout out to special friend of the Dr. Vibe Show, Nicole Grant, saying good evening, gentlemen. And she also says, I'm sorry to hear of your loss. And she is genuine. So when she says that, she means it, my brother.
I appreciate that, Nicole. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, let's get into the conversation now because we got a lot of things to cover and I know we got a limited amount of time. So my first conversation piece for you is how do you define joy, particularly in the context of Black men's experiences?
Well, I start with, I guess if I could wrap it up in one word, I would start with authenticity, right? A lot of what I'm observing as a counselor and one who counsels Black men is that it is very difficult and uncomfortable for Black men to be authentic, and authentic in their vulnerability, especially, and speaking on their emotions and admitting to those emotions. So how do I define joy is having the ability to do that without feeling emasculated, without feeling, that you're less than. And so, I mean, that's where I start, um, and then, being able to walk in your purpose. Um, so, yeah, so authenticity, being able to walk in your purpose, being able to explore vulnerability, growing in your empathy, and just being able to enjoy life without, having to be on the defense all the time.
Then I want to add on to that. Why is unlocking joy often difficult for Black men?
I mean, we grow up in hypermasculinity, right? I mean, we were, if you are your authentic self growing up, especially the generation that that I grew up in, you'll get clowned for that. You know, you'll most certainly get clowned for that. So it's difficult to be exact, and not only by males, other males, but also you get clowned by females as well. It's just you're not the pressure to be strong and to be show no what's perceived weakness is compiling, and it can be when you have conditioned yourself to think that being vulnerable is weakness, it is difficult to unlock that joy.
Good stuff. I want to switch on the area of cultural and societal factors. So my first conversation piece in that area is what cultural or societal pressures contribute to the challenges Black men face in finding joy?
Okay, so yeah, same thing. Partly hypermasculinity, right? And then also, I mean, we live in a society that's oppressive. You just educated me that it's very similar up there in Canada where you are, and oppression, makes it difficult because you have to be, or you feel like you have to be on the defense all the time. And also, what success look like is defined for you in a lot of ways. It's defined for you. So, you having the ability to define what success looks like for yourself, um, you know, is a challenge. It's a challenge.
How much does racism impact this conversation and this topic?
A lot of, for me personally, because I know a lot of brothers, we're not a monolith. So a lot of brothers will say, I don't experience, I've heard this before. I don't experience racism, but, for me, myself, and and a lot of the men that I see, it is hugely impactful on, joy, racism, discrimination, oppression, systematic oppression, having to step out your door and fight that on a daily basis. I myself have had to fight several systems, the healthcare system, the judicial system, the school system, all the systems, have, made it more difficult for me to unlock my joy and walk in my purpose. Not impossible. So I don't know if you're out there, you're listening and say, you still got to overcome. I agree. I mean, life isn't fair. And to think that it is a cognitive distortion, but we still, uh, calling a spade, it's okay to do that too. And recognize, hey, me being a Black man, systematic oppression makes it more difficult for me to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish.
Good stuff. So we are here having a great conversation with Joe Corley, licensed therapist, about the difficulty of unlocking joy for Black men on the Dr. Vibe Show. Hey, if you're watching live, please ask questions. Ask questions. I also want to put it up there. If you want to get in contact with Joe, There's his website, realconsulting.com, Instagram at jcorley80, and email address jcorley at realuconsulting.com, and also share that information in the comment sections on all the platforms that you're watching this live on the replay. Want to have this next with you. What common mental health issues do Black men face that may hinder their joy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, racial trauma is one. Okay. Dealing with hypermasculinity or childhood trauma is another. There's a lot of things that happen to Black men in their childhood that, you know, are normalized, right? And it takes some healing and some healing work to recognize that, hey, this wasn't normal. You know, what I experienced here was not normal. This was actually a traumatic event, and those traumatic events are showing up in my present day behavior. So, you know, and trauma looks like, father leaving, or abuse in the home, or alcoholic, or parent who is a substance abuser. And this is not, again, we're not a monolith. So there's plenty of Black men who don't experience these things, but it's a common occurrence in the clients that I see, and it was a common occurrence for me. Yes, sir.
Good stuff. And then let me ask then, how can therapy and mental wellness practices support Black men in overcoming these challenges?
First, that's a good question, and I thought about that heavily when I was, getting into understanding racial trauma and the challenges facing Black men. But the first thing is, getting into a space like this gives you an opportunity to be seen. And when you feel seen, you feel comfortable speaking, and you can't heal what you don't reveal. So getting this stuff out, right, without judgment, without persecution, in itself helps you recognize, the cognitive distortions in your mind and the beliefs that have been sparked by the trauma that you felt. And it helps you, give you an opportunity to understand the truth about your situation, and recognize, what power you have to gain peace. So yeah, getting into the mental health space gives you an opportunity to put things where they belong. Everything isn't personal, understanding, you don't have to be defensive about everything, and, that you are actually doing your best, giving yourself grace for the mistakes that you've made in your life, as opposed to just kind of anchoring yourself and letting other people anchor you in the worst moments of your life. And, it helps Black men understand and create boundaries, right? And that's not something we talk about often enough. What does this look like? What does it mean to actually say, no, you don't have to carry the family. You don't have to be present all the time for the family. I'm not, and I don't mean like your immediate family. I mean your, the bigger scope. I don't know the word for the bigger scope of your family, like your brothers and sisters and your uncles and aunts, and, and your parents. We don't have to be present for all that all the time.
All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be chatting some more with Joe in regards to this important subject for Black men and also the Black family. So keep it locked. We'll be back in 30 seconds with some more of some great conversation with Joe Corley. Here we go.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? My name's David Archer, anti-racist psychotherapist from Montreal, Canada, and I wanted to take a moment to give a special shout out to Dr. Vibe and the Dr. Vibe Show. If you're looking for the best conversations, even if you're looking for someone who could help to support you and help you to improve your outlook, the way how you're thinking about things, and cares about the culture, look no further. Go and Google Dr. Vibe, the Dr. Vibe Show, and you're going to find the man of the hour. All right? So, yo, many blessings. Take care. Peace.
All right, we are back with Joe Corley, having a great conversation about the difficulty of unlocking joy for Black men on the Dr. Vibe Show. As we continue on our conversation, I want to ask you, Joe, how do role models and representation affect Black men's pursuit of joy?
Oh, man. That's a really good question.
Take your time on that one. When I hear the "ooh, man," you can take your time on the answer.
It's a really good question, man. It's so important. A lot of times, we don't have the opportunity to kind of see what it is we're trying to be, right? So a lot of the journey, and I don't say we, I'm going to say my experience and the experience of the people that I kind of run with. So I don't want to make sure I'm not speaking for every black man. Um, but I didn't have the opportunity to kind of see what I wanted to be. So, um, you know, having mentors and role models that opened up my eyes to things that I didn't know existed, like I didn't leave the country until I was, 27, 28 years old, because I didn't know that was a thing, you know. I maybe probably I don't want to live with regret or say what I should have done because my therapy space you can't say should. Um, but in hindsight, I probably didn't go to the right college because I didn't have a mentor or anyone guiding me. Both my parents passed away before I was 16 years old. So a mentor would have been critical, and I've played that role as a mentor for several young people, and and listening to them talk, it has given them vision and opportunities that they may not have otherwise known about, or hopes that they might have not have realized were possible. So it's critical, man. It's so critical.
I want to ask, you said something about should, not using should.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? I haven't heard that mentioned before.
Okay. So when I got it, and I'm going to give my therapist credit for this because he's the one that kind of put that on me. I would come into the space with a whole lot of regret. I should have done this. I should have made this choice. I should have, whatever. Went to this college, like I just said. And he just kind of said, it's not allowed, and you can't should all over yourself, right? So it got to be for a while. I started, I kept doing it, but he would catch me every time. And then it got to a point where I started catching myself. And then I started realizing, that there is no time machines. Okay. So there is no value in talking about what I should have done. What I did is what I did, and I can't go backwards and change it. So I have to, accept, my decisions and move forward and make new ones. So, coming in with a bunch of should is counterproductive. So should is not allowed in my space.
Love that. Thank you for that. Can't should all over yourself. I like that. I like that. I'm gonna have to use that. Want to get back about the impact of role models, whether from your own journey or you may want to give some examples of role models who exemplify joy and resilience, and they could be from your own journey. Or do you see any other Black male individuals out there that exemplify joy and resilience?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's something I struggle with. I can't say that I had a whole lot of role models personally that exemplified joy. I will say what I got joy from watching the freedom of my uncle, right? So my uncle, he kind of lives his own life, right? He doesn't he leads very honest man. He's very clear about what he wants. I mean, he's in his late 60s at this point, and he owns this, he owns that. He just seemed very free to me. Like to nobody was running him or making decisions for him. So when I observed that, I got joy from that, and he became a role model to me. And he was the first person or man to tell me that, it's okay to just have one woman and pour into the one woman if she does everything that you needed her to do. If she's there, if that's your woman, it's okay to just be with that one. My own father didn't give me that type of guidance.
Mm.
So him pouring into me in that moment, and kind of showing me, you know, that it was okay to be a certain way. Um, you know, I would mark him as a role model. But I can't think, you know, out, you know, because we see these guys and celebrities on TV, but we don't really know them personally. So it's tough to say, you know, that, you know, they're role models. And I don't have anybody in my personal life that I would consider, other than my uncles, a role model.
Is that something you're wanting to have?
Yeah, man. I mean, yes, I still believe that mentorship is important. Um, and you know, there's still spaces that I can't see, that I would like, you know, I would like somebody to reveal for me. You know, like, hey, even in our initial conversation, I told you right away, like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? And you were gracious enough to share some things with me, you know, and no gatekeeping.
No.
So, you know, that to me, um, you know, that is a branch or of joy, right?
Like,
Um, because for me and my personal experience, kindness for no reason is just it's just not something that has happened. So every time it happens to me, at first I have to get over the initial shock that somebody's actually doing something for nothing, and then you know I get an opportunity to be grateful for it. So yeah, I'm still looking for mentorship, and I'm also looking to be, you know, and I still try to lead, by example with a lot of the people that kind of look up to me.
well, I want to appreciate you and celebrate you for your openness and honesty, not only from a professional lens, but a personal lens. And sure, lean in on me if you choose to. I'm here to serve you, my brother.
I appreciate
Um, no problem. Some comments here. Right Way Home says, great point. No time for regrets.
it.
And I couldn't hold Nicole back. Can't hold
Mhm.
Nicole Gangsta back. And she asks, can you speak on the correlation of difficulty and joy in Black men and the lack of love they may have for themselves?
Nicole, that take a deep breath because what you said was very profound. You hit things right on the head. Um, I can't say with 100%, but I'm going to say like 9 times out of 10, if you are dealing with a Black man who is experiencing a hard time on joy for himself, I'm almost positive it is related to his own guilt, his own shame that he has for himself, and you know the disdain that he has for decisions that he's made in the past, and not being able to dig himself and forgive himself. Now, mind you, there's probably people in his life that are not making it easy for him to forgive himself, but it's not those people's responsibility for him to find forgiveness in himself. So if people are, you know, anchoring you in, like I said, your worst mistakes and your own shame and your own guilt, it's your responsibility to create the boundaries that move you around from that, and give yourself the grace for what you were doing, when you try to survive. When you're trying to survive, give yourself grace and forgiveness for your actions that you took when you're trying to survive. Take accountability in whatever space you need to take accountability, but also give yourself the grace to move on. Great question, Nicole. I hope I answered it. You're on mute, Dr. Bob.
She'll tell me if it's an adequate answer or not. She'll tell us big time, big time.
Right.
I want to ask you also, how important is community in fostering joy among Black men?
It's essential, man. Like, you know, I mean, historically, and you know, in my experience, Black men have struggles like having community with each other, you know, and building bonds and relationships with one another, you know.
What do you feel may be some of the root causes of that? And by the way, Nicole says yes, great answer.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you. Um, the root causes, is, you know, like I said, hypermasculinity. We grow up in hypermasculinity. It's like, hey, uh, how many girls can you sleep with? Can you resolve every single conflict with violence? You know, this is just what we've known and understand. So, building an intimate bond with another man, you know, is something that is uncomfortable. for a lot of Black men, because if you tried that, you were made fun of, and this is, especially if you grew up in an era where, it was, you just can't have vulnerability amongst men without being considered like gay or homosexual. But we realize that now that's utterly ridiculous.
So it makes me ask then, how much of an impact, rightly or wrongly, when we're talking about Black men enjoy the past impacts, and it doesn't sound like it's easy for many of them to let go of it.
No. I mean, it takes a journey, man. Like it takes, but I tell you, like, man, unlocking it, man. When I've seen it real time, like I've seen brothers come in, super hard, super thugging, and when they start unlocking, some of the trauma and understanding that it's not normal, and then opening themselves up for vulnerability and some joy, you could see it pop in their eyes, like, oh, I can actually sit here and have a conversation. Even myself, when I first got into the therapy space, and I knew I needed it, I wasn't running from that. I knew I needed it, but every single search I ran was for a Black woman. I had no desire to talk to another man, none. And I needed to, and that's what ended up kind of saving me was, having them conversations and growing. It was the first time I really grew an intimate bond with another man, and it allowed me to open up to other men and, continue growing bonds with other men, and, and recognize that there's safety in that, because a lot of us are going through some of the same things, and it's just the community of it all. There's healing in that.
Okay, good stuff. And again, I really appreciate, and I know the Dr. Vibe family appreciates your openness, sharing some of your own journey during this conversation. Guess
Yeah.
has another question. So Nicole asks, you mentioned hypermasculinity. What's the difference between, quote, hypermasculinity, unquote, and quote, toxic masculinity, unquote, or is there a difference?
Yeah. Okay. So there is a difference, right? When I'm talking about hyper masculinity, I'm talking about, the belief that, if you're not the strongest, or if you're not, the I think hyper masculinity, if I could describe it, is more external, right? So it's the way that other people are viewing us, and so you look at us Black men and you say they have to be resilient, they must be strong, and you hear that over and over and over and over and over again. And then you start to kind of line yourself up with, that thought process. Like it's an exaggerated, it's an exaggerated perception of what it is to be a man. But like I said, it's usually external. Now, toxic masculinity is like, it's when you're devaluing all of the possibility. It's like misogyny, homophobia, when you don't even really feel that way, right? It has harmful effects, on like your, on your emotional state. Sabotage your relationships, even if they're working for you. Right. So it's just, with toxicity, you are engaging in self-harm. Okay. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. And it's more internal, right? Versus hypermasculinity, which I'm saying is more external. I'm hoping I'm answering that right. I mean,
She's here. She'll certainly give you a grade rating on that, big time. I just want to reset. We're speaking with Joe Corley, licensed therapist, about the difficulty of unlocking joy for Black men on the Dr. Vibe Show. I am hoping you're catching this live, but if not, certainly catch it on the replay, because this is good stuff that Joe is laying down here. I want to ask next up, what are some of the barriers that prevent Black men from seeking mental health support?
Well, that is to piggyback off Nicole again. That's toxic masculinity, right? because that is emotional suppression, right? There's a piece of you that just suppresses your emotions and you don't want to talk because of you've got this perception that being vulnerable and seeking help makes you somehow weak, right? So that is one of the key components that keeps men out of therapy. But also the hypermasculinity of it all too, because there is a perceived expectation that you have to constantly be tough, right? So because of that, you detach from your emotions. So both of those kind of terms play a role in the way we show up in the healing space, or our lack of presence in the healing space, I should say.
It's a little bit off our topic, but I think it has something to do with this. I'm going to ask this conversation piece. What impact did the pandemic have on Black men in therapy, and also post-pandemic?
Say that one more time.
So it's a complex question. So I'll do the first part. What impact did the pandemic have on Black men in therapy?
Honestly, I believe that it, got more Black men in therapy. One, because like we were sitting at home, and doing the virtual role. Let me be honest. I don't honestly know what impact the pandemic had on Black men in therapy. I know that's when I started to go, and I've kind of seen a trend of more Black men going. Now, I don't know if that was more the pandemic or that was just in line with, um, you know, the climate, the social climate around that time, which was, election time, and a lot of Black men were stressed. So I don't know if those things went hand in hand. But I think a lot more Black men around 2020 started engaging more in therapy.
All right. So Nicole says, thank you for your perspective on the definitions. Right Way Home has a question. How much of, quote, hyper, unquote, masculinity is a Eurocentric concept of a man?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? And when I say external, I mean, that's where a lot of it comes from. That's where, how we are represented in TV shows and, and movies. Think about, for those older folks, think about like James Evans, from Good Times. Even though that, if you look at it now, like I just with the passing of John Amos, I just went back and like binge watched all of Good Times, right? And I'm like, well, this is super problematic, like the way he's showing up with all this anger and all this hostility. But that was considered a strong Black man, even though he wasn't being vulnerable at all. I mean, he was slamming chairs against the wall. So, and you say Eurocentric, I don't think there were Black writers on that show. Right. So, that
If there were very few. Well, the executive producer is a white Jewish man, Norman Lear.
Norman Lear, right? Yeah.
Right. So
right.
He signed off on everything. So it was through his lens a final check mark got for a show. So there you go.
Right. And think about all them the Black men in those Norman Lear shows. You know what I mean? Like that was the perception. There's no way that they were going to have an episode of James Evans going to therapy. There was no way, we didn't see George Jefferson going to therapy. We didn't see any of those things. So, and if that episode exists and y'all got it, check me right now, because I just binge watched and I don't remember that episode, so.
Has that interpretation media-wise got any better in your lens?
Yeah, I would say it's gotten better. It's gotten better because we have more Black creatives. So I think that, that is helping the situation, but also, there's a limit. I think that, if you listen to the Black creatives in Hollywood, certain movies just won't get made, like they won't get made. I don't have any experience with that, so I'm just listening to what they say. But I think it's gotten better, but it's still like it's got a mile to go. You still, look at a lot of the movies. What are we represented by? Like the super chiseled, quiet, black man. And it's still some problems out there. It's still bad representations.
Guess who has another question?
Girl Nicole.
Okay. So I knew this one was coming. The lack of joy in black men is often affected by not having a father or role model around full time. So why do you think so many black men allow this narrative to continue through the generations?
Nicole, I don't think black men are allowing that narrative to continue. You know what I mean? Like, if you really look at what's going on today, like, there are black men are, I believe, and I don't know the statistics, somebody can look it up for me, but I think we're the most present fathers actually statistically that there are right now. And look it up and check me on that. It's just something I think I heard, but I don't think we allow the narrative. The narrative just keeps getting pushed because it's it's conducive to what's needed right now for society, not from our standpoint, but to make the black man look as though he's not showing up for his kids. That's a profitable narrative. So I don't think we're allowing that narrative to continue through generations. I really don't think that's true.
Okay.
But please look up if you got.
Well, I know Nicole will have a response to that. I know she'll have a definite response on that. Let me ask. Okay, I'll ask this. I'll let. She had another question, so let me get to it now. She asked earlier on. It's important that we change these generational cycles of things like men can't show emotion. What safe space do you provide with the males in your own family or friends network to be vulnerable?
Oh, listen, I'm a father of 2 sons, and I open myself up to them all the time. I don't approach them with judgment. I approach them with open ears and vulnerability, and I show them vulnerability. I go to them and talk to them and help them hear my perspective. And then I ask probing questions to get their perspective on things and let them know that it's safe for them to be who they are in my presence. So that's the way I open it up for all the brothers in my space. If it's a man who wants to sit down with me, it's going to be free of judgment. First of all, it's going to be full of empathy, right? And it's going to be some, maybe some masked psychoeducation as I'm kind of peeling off the layers and letting them know, like, look, this is the perception, this is the reality, this is what's logical, this is illogical. And so let's talk about, what you're really feeling. When you get angry, for instance, anger is a secondary emotion, so I'm teaching brothers that what you're really mad at is, what's presenting itself as anger is usually just sadness or fear. So I hit a brother like, what are you really afraid of? I don't say, are you afraid? I said, what are you sad about? I don't say, are you sad? I say, what are you afraid of? What are you sad about? Because I know that's what it is. I don't have to, I'm not making it into something. When you're angry, that's fear, that's sadness, one or the other. So, and then you open it up and brothers usually be like, okay, let me just keep it real.
I know that you may have shared one or two, but maybe you have another personal story or experience that highlights the journey to finding joy.
Oh yeah, man. I guess, overcoming so much trauma and adversity in my life to even get to this space. When I tried to take my own life twice, and that is what put me in the therapy space. And the first time that I tried to take my life, I was very good at masking my depression. It was not obvious at all that I was depressed. And more, it just looked like anger, and if you don't have an education on what I just said about, anger being a secondary emotion, you don't know what anger is really masking. So getting to a space where, I could acknowledge that I was not okay, and, going into and start embarking on this mental health journey, and then coming out of it realizing, that authenticity is where it's at, vulnerability is where it's at, and being able to talk about these things without feeling some of the same shame that I felt growing up. I wasn't able to speak on these things without feeling embarrassed. And, here I am right now talking to you about it, and knowing that that's okay. 6-7 years ago, I wouldn't be able to look anyone in the eye and say, I tried to take my own life twice.
Wow.
But,
Well, you're a great example in my mind of you making your testimony.
yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem. I want to ask in regard to how has your own work in education and mental health informed your understanding of this topic?
Before the work becomes the journey. And so, when the journey comes and then it puts me into the work, it exposes me to other people's vulnerabilities, and to be good at what I do, I have to educate myself, through other people's experiences sometimes. So I have to, be empathetic and not judgmental, and then get down to the source of everybody's behavior. What is the source? So my work and understanding, what emotions are and how they show up in people's lives, it's been incredible for me personally, and my family. I think they get a better version of me, and the people I serve, I think probably have watched me grow in a way that is, I get told all the time that you're good at this, and I accept that. And I wouldn't be able to accept that years ago. I wouldn't be able to say or take people's praises, because I have so much shame for who I was that I couldn't accept anybody telling me nice things. But now I accept it with gratitude. I am good at this. This is what I know this, and that's part of digging into the work and understanding that it's okay to have gratitude as opposed to shame, that which erodes relationships.
Okay. She's got more to share. Nicole says, aside from statistics, we can safely base that answer on the Black fathers present in our own network. I personally know several who are, quote, sometimes, unquote, dads. Maybe your network has worked to change this.
Okay, I can accept that. I get to say that that now is a statement that I can address. But to say is like, we're accepting it generations and generations. That one was a little hard for me, Nicole. But if you're wondering why some Black men, okay, I think that's the word we were missing in your first question, is some. Why some Black men allow the narrative to continue to play through generations. It's shame and it's fear. All right. A lot of it could be, it's all situational too. So let's just, for example, say one man has been abandoned by his father, right? What do you think that manifests in him? Probably a fear of abandonment, right? So that fear of abandonment, how does that show up in his everyday life? He then becomes afraid to make emotional connections to others because he's always afraid that those people are going to abandon him, right? So that's just one example of why somebody would continue that. And that's not giving anybody an excuse. All right. We have to be fathers. And I don't ever want it to come off like I'm giving people outs on being fathers. But again, empathy and understanding helps me gain perspective to know that it's not just as simple as it may sound. So that's just one example of, why a Black man or any man would not show up in his child's life after being abandoned himself.
All right. So Nicole adds, I'm very sorry to hear of your personal struggle. Life has a way of showing us the strength we never knew we had.
Absolutely. And I'm grateful for those struggles. Honestly, I take gratitude in them now. I don't have the anger that I once had for the things that, because, you know, it's given me purpose, and purpose is immensely powerful.
Good stuff. So as we start winding it down a little bit here, what are some practical strategies or tools that Black men can use to unlock and sustain their joy?
Right. So here's one. No emotions are meant to be pushed away, right? So when you have an emotion that makes you feel uncomfortable, and or that is very, you know, present, and you can feel it and know that it's there, you know, address it, right? Let's figure out, where is that coming from? What is that an indicator of? More than likely, you know, you are, you know, tickling some emotional trigger that you're not, maybe not aware that is there. And, you know, you start wondering, okay, what are my emotional triggers? Well, they're usually based in your fear. What do you fear of? Fear of abandonment, fear of not thinking you're good enough. You know, there's some major fears out there, and one of them is probably causing you to feel that emotion. So you have to go back and understand, when do you remember first feeling that feeling? And this is where you pull out your journal, fellas. Okay, when do I remember first feeling that this way? All right, I write this down, and then what is it in that moment that I started to believe about myself? All right. And I got a little hint for you. Whatever you began to believe about yourself, more than likely was never true. It's never true. So let's ask yourself what your higher self, or somebody you believe is a trusted advisor, would go and look at this moment that you're talking about as if you were watching it on TV. And what would you then say to that younger version of yourself? Who is, you know, you can't tell them what to do. You can't change what actually happened. But if you could change what that younger version of yourself started to believe in that moment, what would you then say? And you might have to repeat that, you know, several times before you start, you know, before your mind starts to begin to accept the fact that whatever you believed in that moment wasn't true. And then you'll find yourself honestly healed from whatever that trigger is. I mean, that's something that works. Journaling works, fellas. Sitting with your emotions, putting pen to paper. You know, I know some people like to do it on the notes app, but I encourage you to put pen to paper and, you know, really process your emotional triggers. Why am I so mad? Why can't I forgive? You know, all of these other things that come up.
Okay, good stuff. What changes would you like to see in the mental health field, to better serve Black men?
Well, a lot of the education that goes into, you know, therapists, educating therapists, is very colonized information, you know. And so I would like to see a decolonization of, you know, some of these thought processes, and make it more applicable to the experiences of uh, the Black man, the Black woman. And, you know, I think we need to incorporate that in the education, because some of the models and modalities that they teach don't really apply.
Stuff. Are there emerging trends or research that give you hope for improving joy and well-being when it comes to Black men, or for Black men?
Yeah, I believe that there are many more therapists that are, you know, doing the work to decolonize therapy. I'm picking up readings. I'm seeing things, following people on Instagram that kind of, you know, are unlocking some things, and, you know, making it okay to say this is not okay. You know, the way that we're doing this is not okay. So, you know, I'm kind of going into it right now and trying to learn more so I can share more.
Nice. Getting back into the role of the community, are there specific community-based initiatives that you've encountered, or support systems that you recommend for Black men?
Um, you know, there's some that, you know, that I participate in. Like, you know, there's a community called the Doc, where we meet every Sunday. I sometimes show up as the lead therapist, but every Sunday it happens. And Black men from all over the globe log on to this Zoom, and it's a safe space where we have topics, and we process how we're feeling. And I think it would be beneficial to create more spaces like that. I'm pretty sure there are more. I have a men's group that I attend. Um, you know, I think every other Saturday. Sometimes I don't get to make it, but a lot of times I do, and it's a good 15 to 20 Black men in there. And I remember distinctively we actually met in person one time for breakfast, and there was a table full of Black women that was not that far off from us, and they walked over and just said, "What is this? We really don't know what this is," That blew my mind. You know what I mean? That blew my mind that they felt like, it was so odd to see this table full of Black men, fellowshipping. So, creating more spaces like that is, where it's at. I think we can do more of that if we can.
So, two last conversation pieces. First off, how can allies and loved ones support Black men in their journey towards joy?
I just say be a listening ear. Make sure that you are removing judgment and that you are asking questions that seek understanding, as opposed to, I don't give advice. You know what I mean? Like I try very, very hard to, if I start sounding like I'm giving advice, I want to check myself, because that is not helpful. And that it was all advice is going to come through my own lens and my own lived experience. And that's truth for everyone. So what I want to do, I talk, make sure I say from my experience or from the perspective that I have, this is what I observed. And you can take what you want from that. And it gives you an opportunity to then say, well, from my perspective, kind of just like the way Nicole did, and say, hey, from my perspective, this is what I saw. And I can say, I can't argue with that. That's what she's seen from her perspective. So then we can have a conversation about it without it turning into conflict.
And then finally, what message of hope or encouragement would you like to share with Black men struggling to find their joy?
Brothers, talk to somebody. There's a light. There is a light. I know it seems hopeless at times, and then all you can see is darkness, but the light does exist. There is a space where you can be safe. And if you go talk to somebody and they don't fit, talk to somebody else. Don't be afraid to keep moving around until you find a fit for you that actually works. All right. And, there is joy there. It's possible. It's attainable. We can make it, but you have to put forth a little effort to get to it.
Good final words to finish it off, words of hope and encouragement. Joe, I'd like to thank you for giving us the most valuable thing that you have, your time to share with the Dr. Vibe family. Thank you from a professional lens and a personal lens and journey for making this an epic conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, brother.
No problem. So there's Joe's contact information, realuconsulting.com, Instagram at jcorley80, email address jcorley@realu, and that's the letter U, not YOU. That's you, consulting.com. And good news, Joe is going to be visiting us once a month for the next little while. We already have topics lined up for the next little while. So if you enjoyed this, thank you. If you really enjoyed it, tell other people about it, and especially follow Joe. And also too, if you want to speak with him, doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt.
Whoa.
Doesn't hurt. All right. So as always, Joe, I want to say, don't, you and your family and all the people that you serve, don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and remember to give yourself grace.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye.
My pleasure. All right, everybody. That is it. Another epic conversation. So I want to say thank you for everyone who tuned in live or tuned in on the replay to watch the Dr. Vibe show. And Joe is going to be back. And hey, I'd suggest reach out to Joe. He's a cool guy. First things first, you can watch replays of my show on the Dr. Vibe Show YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and the Dr. Vibe Show website, the drvibeshow.com. And as always, I want to encourage you, if you can, to subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also follow the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And two, to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I'm a part of, please email me dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. So, got one more comment here. Nicole says, great conversation. Thank you for your insight. Much appreciated, Nicole. So this is how we ended off. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. And remember, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. And remember to give yourself grace. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good.
Yeah. Listen.